Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. While Anthony Joshua was creating his own piece of heavyweight history in Saudi Arabia against Andy Ruiz Jr., he was also helping break pay-per-view records back in his home of the United Kingdom. So you see here on screen, the Daily Mail reports 1.6 million pay-per-view buys purchased for the fight. That was $24.95, that's £24.95, which is roughly 32 American dollars. And when you actually do the conversion, so see here on screen, I've already done that for you, 52 million US dollars that was generated out of the UK revenue just alone. So chuck in the money that DAZN would have been paying for the fight, because that would have been considerable. Other international pay-per-view, they've done pretty well, but they needed to. Joshua apparently having somewhere around $80 million for a purse. Who knows what's real, how much he was really getting, but it would have been substantial. But 1.6 million pay-per-view buys. This hasn't been confirmed by the Broadcasters Audience Research Board. Their figures are generally the ones that are relied upon. Sky will never release the numbers themselves, but it is a case that we did hear from Eddie Hearn that Sky very happy with how the pay-per-view was tracking, that it was a big number. And in terms of where that rates all time in the context of other pay-per-views, well, here is a graphic from metro.co.uk. So obviously this Ruiz Joshua rematch, 1.6 million on top, eclipsing Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko and Joshua versus Joseph Parker, 1.45 million, rounding out third place. And Anthony Joshua also down here at number 7, 887,000 buys for the Carlos Takam fight. I was pretty sure that the Alexander Povetkin fight was somewhere around these numbers, but that's by the by. So what they are reporting, a new pay-per-view record in the UK for that much anticipated rematch, which Joshua obviously won. So I think anyone involved with the Joshua camp will be very happy, one, with the performance, but two, the ratings back in the UK. And I guess it sort of begs the question, well, what happens next? Can he eclipse that again, or is that only going to be for a big fight? Because if the next fight is Kubrat Pulev, I wouldn't expect it to be anywhere near 1.6 million pay-per-view buys in the United Kingdom. Maybe somewhere more like the Carlos Takam fight, or a little bit higher, maybe around 1 million buys. And perhaps the pay-per-view figure of $24.95, that could actually be Joshua's new pay-per-view figure going forward. I mean, there was a debate among fans, and certainly I believe that this was not so much about a cash out, because in case he lost, I think it was just about making as much money as possible for a highly anticipated rematch. And they may feel now that they've trodden that water, that $24.95 in the UK is the new figure for Joshua fights. Maybe it will be horses for courses, somewhere around $20 for Pulev, but if it was a big unification, say against Deontay Wilder or even Alexander Usyk or something like that, whoever he would have a big fight against, maybe it would be put up for those sorts of events. There's precedent now to do that. So over $50 million, and that's US money generated from the UK pay-per-view alone. That's some decent numbers, but given all the costs and everything else, they needed to make some money on this fight. And clearly with the site fee that was paid for the fight, there's been a lot of money that's been swirling around this, and Joshua getting a fair piece of the pie. Andy Ruiz Jr. reportedly getting somewhere around $13 million, plus other different sweeteners, etc., that were part of his deal. I believe he was going to get a cut of the Mexican pay-per-view money, but that was something that was talked about a number of months ago. Unclear if that was part of his deal, but certainly he did negotiate a better deal before agreeing to go to Saudi Arabia. And the what next? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk about who Joshua will face, Kubrat Pulev or Alexander Usyk. He's got 2 mandatories that are due. And there has been talk about a return to the UK to potentially fight at Tottenham Hotspur. So they've got a stadium there that's recently built, seats around 60,000 people. I'm just going to the story on Sky Sports. So 62,062 people. It says it's an attractive prospect for the 30-year-old's next bout in April or May, with Wembley off the table. And that whole thing with Wembley off the table, I'm not so sure that's a bad thing, because the whole 90 to 100,000 stadium thing, without the right fight, it may have done its dash here. I think for Joshua, maybe he's come off the highs where he was for the stadium type of fight. That always seemed to be a little bit of a novelty. And I think if they did face Kubrat Pulev or an Alexander Usyk, I think they could easily sell at 60,000. But we saw for the Povetkin fight, it was more of a struggle. They didn't sell out, and that certainly in a big stadium like that does stand out. There was a lot of people there. I think, what was it, about 70,000, 75,000, but it was short of capacity. And after all, you're not going to be able to sell out a big stadium every single time if it's not exactly the fight that people want. You could still sell out Wembley for Fury and Joshua, Fury and Wilder, Joshua and Wilder, etc. Any combination of those guys sells out a big stadium in the United Kingdom, in my view. But Tottenham Hotspur, 60,000 people, it's interesting. But of the next fight, Eddie Hearn, his promoter, says the phone has gone crazy. It's like, bring him here, bring him here. They've seen what we've done here, and there's lots of options internationally, but he does want to box back in the UK. We spoke to Spurs about hosting this fight, brackets, the rematch against Ruiz, which they were keen to do, but unfortunately the dates didn't work out. They would be keen to do it, and it would be a nice stadium to do it in London. So we'll see where all this goes, because it is just one of a number of venues that could potentially host this. And remember, Saudi Arabia came out of nowhere late in the day to get the Joshua and Ruiz Jr. rematch fight. If there's another big site fee that's paid to secure the fight, they'll probably go where the money is. So I could imagine, for example, say if China put up a massive amount of money, they may look to do a fight like that. And maybe the Pulev fight, that is one that you could do somewhere like that for some exposure. And potentially Joshua, if he wins that one and wins it well, it's good for his promotional awareness in that part of the world. He's a growing sort of star in the world of sport. Still not, maybe where he needs to be to get on a par with some of the biggest names in sport. But he's not far away. And his star after that win over Andy Ruiz Jr. probably got a little bit bigger than it was otherwise before, because there was a good storyline with that fight, repeat or revenge, and ultimately he got revenge, he got his redemption. And just rounding out this video, so BoxRec, as a result of that fight, the rematch, has updated its rankings based on its algorithm. So before the fight, Joshua, I believe he was in 3rd or 4th, he was at 600 points there or thereabouts, behind Deontay Wilder, who was on top, and Andy Ruiz Jr., who was a couple of points behind Wilder. But Joshua leaps up to 913 points, gets about 300 points from that Ruiz Jr. fight. He's back on top. So right now, for the top 5, Joshua, Deontay Wilder, Alexander Usyk, Tyson Fury, Andy Ruiz Jr. You've also got the rest of the top 10 there. As you can see, Derek Chisora now in 10th spot there. Dillian White, number 6. Povetkin, number 7. Kubrat Pulev, number 8. Luis Ortiz, number 10. Hopefully we see a mixture of these guys getting in the ring in the next year or so. But Joshua back on top of the points related system that BoxRec is. It's an algorithm based on wins. You get points for who you faced, etc. So check that out at your leisure. But Joshua apparently breaking the pay-per-view record, generating a huge amount of money. And he needed to, because he obviously had a big payday, which is reported somewhere around £50 million or thereabouts, $80 million, as has been reported widely. If it is that much, well, I'm sure he'd be paying a decent amount of tax. But what do you make of it all? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.